Hello Green Man Wine Club gang, you're very welcome back to our April lineup, and thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you're finding some value in these videos. We'd love to get your feedback or comments, anything in particular you'd like us to talk about. We try to stay away from reading out the notes because you have those for your sort of background, the technical insights into the wines. Really, these videos are about sharing the experience of drinking these wines and how we like to serve them, what we pick up on the palate. One of our feedback comments recently asked, what should I be tasting? And wine tasting is a very subjective thing, so by nature we steer away from telling you exactly what fruit content is in it, but certainly happy to tell you what I experience on a certain day. One point of interest is checking that biodynamic calendar we mentioned before, because in my experience wines definitely taste different on different days, and on a fruit and flower day you definitely tend to get more of that fruity experience, so that can be something useful. So I hope you enjoyed the lineup of wines. Let us know what you think and we'll move on to the first. Hello, you're very welcome back to the Green Man Wine Club. For the April session we're looking at Spain. So we covered 3 different regions of Spain this month, looking outside and beyond Rioja, which is the area a lot of us are familiar with and probably started our Spanish wine journey with. But we've kind of gone on holidays to Spain for April, bearing in mind most of us probably won't get to go abroad on holidays this year, so we'll have to eat and drink our way to foreign places. We have a white wine from Malaga, Sierras de Malaga. Sierras usually implying mountain ranges, and these grapes do come from high altitude vineyards. We have La Nave, I think that's how you pronounce it, La Nave from Bierzo, which is up in the northwest region of Spain, a very up and coming new wave area. And we also have Soplo, which is back down south to the holiday destination of Valencia, seeing some really exciting things coming out of there as well. All of these are made by family, small producers who have a real passion for where they come from and getting back to the traditional grapes and the traditional way of making wine. Really significant happenings in Spain at the moment. A lot of young winemakers having travelled the world, gone to university, made wine in different wine areas. A lot of them are coming home to try and express their terroir and their origins, which is partly why we love these wines so much. The first wine is called La Raspa, and it's a venture between 2 friends, as you'll see in your notes, Juan and Vicente, who go back quite a long way in terms of winemaking experience. And again, for them it was about taking the project home. Down in Malaga, a very hot, dry area, as we know and love. So they keep their wines fresh by picking at altitude and growing, I should say, growing at altitude and picking maybe slightly earlier in the harvest season. The grapes in this you may not be familiar with. We have Moscatel and Doradilla, so 80-20 ratio. Moscatel gives loads of fruity, grapey aromas. And what the Doradilla does, it adds a little bit of minerality, acidity, which is key in this hot area, and a bit of minerality, almost a saline kind of finish. Something of interest for me, Muscat normally is quite grapey and fruity, but I think the winemaking here is really evident. The fact that the natural yeasts are used, the native yeasts that are found in the vineyard, and the sort of low intervention, sort of hands-off approach to this wine, it gives it a much more herbaceous angle, which is something I really like. And I actually ended up opening this at room temperature, and it's drinking fantastically well at room temperature. So chilled down, it's just going to be so fresh and delicious. And for me, it has that kind of grassy citric aroma, loads of white flowers, and really fresh. And on the palate, it's really clean, fruity, easy to drink. With that nice saline kick at the end. Brilliant food wine, but actually drinking really well on its own. And I'd be quite happy with a plate of smoked almonds to go with this. So we move on to our second wine. This is called La Nave, and it's a blend, but it's mostly Mencia, the local grape from Bierzo, up in the Galicia region of northwest of Spain, near to Portugal. It does have 10% Garnacha and a little tiny bit of Palomino, which is a white grape in it. So this is made by a very familiar winemaker to us in Green Man Wines. Germán Blanco is his name, and possibly well known to some of you because his Milu wine sells very well for us, his entry level, if you like, Milu wine from Quinta Milu in Ribera del Duero. So he has a great passion for this area up in Bierzo because it's where he was raised for some of his life by his great-grandmother, as you would have seen in the notes. And her name was Aurora, and he called the winery after her. It's called Casa Aurora. He, again, I suppose, wanted to go back to the beginning. There was a very old vineyard that belonged to his grandmother, which he gradually worked and restored. And it took him 12 years of labour in that vineyard to bring it to fruition in terms of a wine. And these are the wines coming from there. They're really exciting wines. Mencia, if it's not handled well, can be thin and bitter and kind of harsh. But in the hands of Germain, it's just got this gorgeous silky fruit and it's really ripe. These are high altitude vineyards, but again, it's a continental climate, very hot summers where these vineyards are located. So you get all the sun, all the exposure in the ripening, but the cool nights and the high altitude keeps these wines really fresh. And freshness, when we talk about fresh, we usually talk about acidity. It means they're juicy, they're kind of clean, moreish in lots of ways. This is organic, uncertified, but it is organic. One interesting thing that is mentioned in the notes is that Germain is moving sort of against the tide in the sense that he's starting to de-stem his grapes, whereas at the moment the trend and the fashion is really to leave in stems for the fermentation, which adds a sort of bit of grip, a savoury angle. It also can help with acidity and freshness. But he thinks it ends up dominating the wine over time. So he's pulled back, and 80% of the grapes used in this wine are de-stemmed, so it's very fruity and soft and overt, and it really, at its price point, I think it just offers fantastic value. I drank some of this last night with Cumberland sausages and mashed potatoes, which I can highly recommend as a pairing. A real comfort food and a wine that just transported me straight away to somewhere sunny. On the nose, it's ripe and it's black and red fruits, which is exactly what you're looking for. It's not tannic, it's not heavy, it's easy to drink and it's quite fresh and elegant. It's soft, it's fruity. As I said, it has that juicy angle, sometimes kind of seen as a crunchy red, but for me this has a bit more body. So it's not angular in any sense. It's soft and delicious and attractive, and again, from a winemaker we hugely respect, and you'll see lots of his wines on our shelves. So yes, I hope you enjoy wine too. So our final wine from the April lineup is Soppolo, the flow of life, and I really love what Raphael says on the back. There are special moments which occasionally surface as treasured memories, reminding us of the joy of life. And if ever there was a year in which we need to be remembering the joys of life, I think it's this past year we've all had. So again, it's kind of timely that we are transported to Valencia. Soppolo is made Raphael Cambra. Raphael is a native of Valencia, and actually his family are wine growers in the sense that they work in vine nurseries. So they work on cuttings, they grow saplings, I guess, for wineries around the area. So Raphael is by nature very close to the land in that sense. His philosophy is very hands-off, low intervention, native yeast in the vineyards, no cultured yeast, no new oak, and he focuses on Garnacha, which is the local grape variety from Valencia. These vineyards are certified organic as well. The alcohol in this wine is a little bit higher than the previous wine, and again, that would be indicative of where it's from. So we're right back down the south, whereas up in Bierzo you have the high altitude and slightly further north latitude as well. So there's a bit more alcohol in this, which you do feel around the chest area. However, his winemaking is very focused on purity of expression and finesse and elegance, so it doesn't feel heavy or cumbersome on the palate. Garnacha as a grape variety is always reminiscent kind of pepper, so you might get a bit of white pepper profile. It becomes more evident as the wine is warmer, and I served this wine two ways, and I think my preferred way is slightly chilled, so I would chill it maybe for an hour in the fridge, because I think that sort of brings out less of the jammy peppery notes of Garnacha, and you get some of the structure and the elegance. But at room temperature it's very delicious, particularly with something like a spicy casserole or something like that. It's very black fruits, as you'd expect from the warm area this comes from. Blackberry and kind of plummy on the palate again, and you can see from the colour of these two reds, they're not heavy, they're not extracted. There is some pumping over for a little bit of colour and tannin, but with a light touch. So these wines aren't heavy, you couldn't stand on them, they're not chewy, they're very fresh, food friendly wines, which is very much the fashion from these new wave winemakers. So it's different. The Mencia here that we tasted in wine number 2 has a bit more of that savoury angle to it. The Garnacha is overtly fruity and it's really juicy. I can feel my mouth watering and very Moorish, you definitely want to top up your glass. It has that peppery angle, which is why we'd suggest like chorizo or any sort of strong flavoured food, because it can really stand up to it. And again, slightly chilled for me, this is brilliant for cheeses and charcuterie. A wine well worth trying and phenomenal value at the price.